City of Bellevue regular City Council meeting for October 11th, 2021. We have Karen Roberts filling in as our clerk tonight. Thank you, Karen. Could you please do the roll?
You bet. Mayor Robinson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Neuenhouse?
Here.
Councilmember Barksdale?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Robertson? Councilmember Stokes?
Here.
Councilmember Zahn?
Here.
Councilmember Zahn, could you please lead us in the flag salute?
Happy to, Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we have two proclamations tonight. The first one is the National Disability Employment Awareness Month proclamation. Councilmember Stokes, could you read that to us, please?
Yes, if I can find it.
Okay. If you need time, we can do the other one first.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Okay.
If we can.
Deputy Mayor, you have the Indigenous Peoples Day proclamation. Could you read that, please?
Certainly, Mayor. Thank you. Whereas Indigenous people have lived in the Puget Sound region from time beyond memory, and whereas as a community, we acknowledge the land we are on as the ancestral homelands of the coastal Salish people, the traditional home of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish tribe of Indians and Snoqualmie Indian tribe. And whereas we take this opportunity to express our deepest respect to the original caretakers of this land who continue to live here and honor their heritage. And whereas Indigenous people have and continue to make significant contributions to the region through science, technology, literature, the environment, and the arts. And whereas a delegation of Indigenous people to the United Nations sponsored international conference on the Discrimination Against Indigenous Peoples Conference proposed the Indigenous Peoples Day in 1977. And whereas in 1992, the municipality of Berkeley, California became the first municipality to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. And whereas the city of Bellevue is committed to upholding the values of access, equality, inclusion, and opportunity for local and regional Native Americans, Alaska Natives, and Indigenous communities. Now, therefore, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of its City Council, do hereby proclaim October 11th, 2021 as Indigenous Peoples Day in Bellevue, and urge all residents to reflect on the history and contribution of Indigenous people. The city further reaffirms its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and serving everyone in our community. Signed, Lynn Robinson, Mayor, City of Bellevue.
Thank you. And Councilmember Stokes, are you ready to read the National Disability Employment Awareness Month proclamation?
Yes, I am, Mayor. Thank you. City of Bellevue proclamation. Whereas more than 1 in 4 U.S. adults, or 61 million Americans, have some type of disability according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And whereas October 2021 marks the 76th anniversary of National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And whereas the purpose of National Disability Employment Awareness Month is to educate about disability employment issues and celebrate the many and varied contributions, talent, and value of American workers and with disabilities. And whereas people with disabilities continue to experience disproportionate instances of employment discrimination, poverty, and economic instability, and whereas workplaces welcoming of the talents of all people, including people with disabilities, are a critical part of our efforts to build an inclusive community and strong economy. And whereas the City of Bellevue embraces the diversity, culture, and contributions of many residents with disabilities in our schools, government, workforce, and community by consistently and diligently working to make city employment, programs, services, and facilities accessible to people with disabilities. And whereas numerous organizations and city staff in Bellevue work with constituents and communities to develop programs and policies that encourage equity in hiring for people with disabilities. Now, therefore, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of its City Council, I do hereby proclaim the month of October 2021 as National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and urge all residents of Bellevue to support disability equity by recognizing the value and contributions and urge of people with disabilities in our workplaces, and pledging to continue to take steps throughout the year to recruit, hire, retain, and advance individuals with disabilities, while pursuing the goal of creating opportunity, full participation, and economic self-sufficiency. Signed by Lynn Robinson, Mayor, City of Bellevue.
Thank you. City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for oral? Oh, no, sorry. We're going on to the approval of the agenda. Do you have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for oral communications?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There is one speaker signed up this evening. Miss Evelyn Huffman, can you hear me? Evelyn Huffman? I see her on the speaker list, so I'm not sure.
I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. Thank you. Go ahead. Your time begins now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor, for responding to my email, and thank you, John Stokes, for calling me. My concern, I think you are aware of how I've been desperately searching for an apartment for my my daughter, who was looking for a studio apartment on the east side. And my concern is I've been working with Arch Housing, and there's beautiful pictures on the Arch Housing website, but none of these places are offering any studio apartments or that come under the umbrella of Arch Housing. Exactly what I'm saying is she qualifies for 30% of AMI, and they're not offering anywhere close to that. If there is availability, it's at 80%, which is not affordable. The market rate for a studio apartment, they're saying in Bellevue, is like close to $2,000. Some other places like in Issaquah, it's $1,500. My daughter makes $24,000 a year. So what I'm asking is, what I want to state is, there is virtually nothing available for her. This is not right. Bellevue is a community of abundance and wealth. And I'm asking, don't put these pictures on the websites if there is nothing available. I know you can't respond to me, but I want to make you aware that some of these, I have called Arch Housing. Sometimes I may get a call back. Often, I would say majority of the time, I don't get a call back. When I call these housing developments, they tell me with a straight face, there's a 3 to 5 year waiting list or a 1 to 5 year waiting list, and we have nothing available. So I feel like my daughter, who is employed, but just doesn't make a lot of money, there should be something out there in this area that she shouldn't have to go to South King County or Bothell or Everett to find an affordable apartment. I want to make you aware that this need is urgent. Thank you.
Anybody else signed up, Clerk?
No, at this point, that is the end of the pre-registered list. Are there any members of the public connected to this meeting that would like to speak and did not pre-register? If so, please use the raise hand function in Zoom if you are connected with a computer, or use *9 to raise your hand if you are connected via telephone. Seeing that no one has raised their hand, Mayor, that therefore ends oral communications.
Great, thank you. And those communications are very timely for our second study session item tonight. So I appreciate hearing that. We have the report of their city manager next, Mr. Miyake.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one item to report under the manager's report this evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight, I'd like to share with you some great news, and that is the City of Bellevue recently received the 2021 National Roadway Safety Award sponsored by the Federal Highway Administration and the Roadway Safety Foundation for work on video analytics as it relates to Vision Zero. Before I turn it over to Andrew Singalakis, our transportation director, to say a few words about the award, I just wanted to recognize and thank the staff. There's a lot of staff that have worked on this for the outstanding work in achieving this award. With that, I'll turn it over to Andrew Singalakis, our transportation director.
Well, thank you, City Manager Miyake, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newenhouse, and the City Council. And I'm very proud to let you know that the Bellevue Transportation Department was the recipient of a national award. It's the 2021 National Roadway Safety Award from the Federal Highway Administration and from the Roadway Safety Foundation. And this relates to our video analytics program, where we use traffic cameras to discern near-miss collisions and then adjust transportation operations to accommodate the information. And I want to especially thank Franz Lowenhurst, Principal Transportation Planner, without whom none of this would be possible. And along with him, Paula Stevens, Chris Long, Darcy Akers, Daniel Lai, Justin Santos, Raid Turi, David Grant, and Matt Demmer from the Transportation Department, along with Cello Pickardell, Garrett Solberg, Joel Taylor from the Information Technology Department, and Monica Buck and Nicholas Melisinos from the City Attorney's Office. Thank you for this great honor. U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg especially called out Bellevue's project by name at the award ceremony last week. And it's a great honor. And I'm just glad that I have such a talented staff at the city to make it possible. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful news. Anything else, Mr. Miyake?
That's it for under the manager's report this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Really impressed. Next, we have our consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
So I didn't,
I hear, excuse me, I'm
Second.
hearing background. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Karin, do we have our audio under control?
Yes, I just removed permissions to talk from a couple people. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, so we're on to our study session items. We have two. Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce the first one?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council Member. The first topic is an update on the Washington State Department of Transportation's I-90 Sunset and Lewis Creek Fish Passage projects. Just by way of background, these projects are part of the state's fish recovery efforts to reconnect waterways where road culverts act as barriers for fish passage. Tonight, WashDOT staff will provide an informational update on two of the projects along I-90 that will impact and benefit the Bellevue area. With that, I'm going to turn over to Andrew Singalakis, our Bellevue Transportation Department Director, as well as Steve Costa, our Bellevue Transportation Regional Project Coordinator, to introduce our guests from WashDOT and to begin the presentation. Andrew?
Well, thank you, City Manager Miyake, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newenhouse, and the City Council. As you said, with me tonight is Steve Costa from the Transportation Department. And I know I'm going to get this wrong, but I'll do it anyway. Almir Rasigi from the Washington State Department of Transportation. And this is a very important project that WashDOT is required to complete. And I'm happy to say that their first step of this project is meeting with the city council. Outreach will happen after this meeting. And I'm very thankful for Washout for starting here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amir. Thank you, Amir.
Thank you, Andrew and Mayor Robinson and members of the council. Thank you for inviting us today to start a conversation about our upcoming I-90, Interstate 90 and Sunset Creek Fish Passage project. So we have the PowerPoint up, so hopefully everybody can see that. My name is Amir Asai. I'm the Washington State Department of Transportation's Assistant Regional Administrator for project development in King and Snohomish counties in the Northwest region. I also have with me members of our project team to help answer any questions that you may have. We have Tim Now, our Assistant Project Engineer, who has been leading the project. Ruth Park, our environmental manager for King and Snohomish counties, and Chris Olson, our assistant communication manager and public information officer on this project. So today we're going to cover Washout's Fish Passage Program, an overview of this specific project, how we will close lanes during construction, noise mitigation, relocation of city utilities, the fish recovery benefits of this project, and our plan to engage and inform the public. Over the many years of building and delivering the state highway system, we have put in place culverts designed to carry the waterway underneath our roadway surfaces. We have since found that many of these culverts block fish migration and block habitat. In 1991, Washout started our fish passage program. And since then, we have corrected 344 barriers, opening 1,160 miles of habitat. While we made a lot of progress, a 2013 federal court injunction required Washout to speed up the fish passage work. We are now working with the area tribes, and it was great seeing the city adopting the proclamation of the Native American, because this is about the tribe. So we are working with the area tribe to open 90% of the habitat blocked by the state culverts by the year 2030. Two locations subject to this injunction are Sunset and Lewis Creeks, which will be built under a design-build contract, where the design builder will complete the design of the project and then they will build it. Sunset Creek crosses under I-90 about half mile east of Interstate 405 interchange. Factorium Mall and Bellevue College are nearby, along with several notable office buildings, businesses, and organizations. To replace the culvert and create a successful passageway for fish underneath I-90, we need to build 4 structures under I-90 and the 2 parallel Bellevue roads. So 2 bridge spans at least 55 feet wide will need to go on eastbound I-90 and westbound I-90. And we will also build the bridge spans or a large box culvert on Southeast Eastgate Way and Southeast 36th Street. Southeast 36th Street bridge span will also carry the Mountain to Sound Greenway Trail. And all roadways will be returned to their original configuration at the conclusion of the project. So a word of caution before I get into the traffic control plan. This is very far from finalized. So as I mentioned earlier, we will be hiring a design builder, which they will finalize the design, and they could find ways to reduce lane reductions and road closures. The design builder will be required to conduct a traffic study before finalizing any traffic control plan. We are coordinating with the city staff on different options that will continue throughout the RFP process or request for proposal process for the procuring a design builder. But based on what we know right now, we expect some combination of lane reduction on eastbound and westbound I-90 for potentially up to 3 years, hopefully shorter than that. And again, depending on the design builder's approach, the time could be a lot less than that, we hope. Since we will be required to close the HOV lanes before the general purpose lanes, that means it is likely that we will need to close the direct access HOV ramp to and from 142nd Place Southeast. We hope that if we do need to close these ramps, the construction crew can use them for access to the work zone so that they don't have to merge with the general traffic. We may also need to replace a few sign bridges in the project area that will require overnight short-term closures on I-90 in order to place those sign bridges. We can construct the Southeast 36th Street crossing with a single lane reduction, requiring either a one-way traffic or alternating traffic. And for Southeast Eastgate Way, we can either do a longer duration single lane reduction or a shorter duration full closure and detour. The Mountain to Sound Greenway Trail will be shifted or detoured while we reconstruct parts of the trail on the new Southeast 36th Street project. And as I mentioned, we are working with the City of Bellevue staff on some of those concepts. So the second location in this project is where Lewis Creek crosses under I-90 in western Issaquah, just outside of Bellevue city limit. For Lewis Creek, we will need to build two large bridge spans, one on eastbound I-90 and a second one on westbound I-90, and a structure on eastbound on-ramp. There will also be structures at Westlake Sammamish Parkway, Southeast, and Southeast Newport Way. We plan on a 50-foot wide bridge span on I-90 and either bridges or box culverts under the on-ramp as well as the Issaquah roads. I won't get too much into the traffic control details for Lewis Creek, but it will likely be very similar to what I talked about on the Sunset Creek on I-90. Some combination of lane reductions on eastbound and westbound I-90 for up to 3 years. We are working with the city of Issaquah to coordinate their local road closures. Washout is currently working with a consultant on a conceptual design and drafting the request for proposal language. We have bi-weekly coordination meeting with your city staff to go over these initial designs, and they're reviewing the preliminary version of the request for proposal language. We are on pace to release the RFP or request for proposal next spring and hire a design builder in the fall of 2022 with the expectation that the construction will begin in spring of 2023. Based on the current preliminary design, we believe the construction could take up to 5 years to finish both locations, but we are working to decrease the construction duration, and we are also looking for efficiencies from design builder. And again, when we talk about construction, it's the construction of the bridges or the box culverts, as well as doing all the excavation to basically create the stream channels. Turning to construction noise and vibration, we don't know for sure how long the construction will be before the design builder finalizes plans and equipment needed for the work, but we do need to excavate some deep stream channels below the roadway surface, so there will be some noisy work. Our priority is to come up with ways to mitigate its effect. Washout typically mails out notices to residents and business owners in advance of projects within 500 feet of the project area. Our noise specialist is currently studying whether that's large enough, and if you need a bigger notification area, that will be written into the RFP or request for proposal. We have spoken to Kaiser Permanente to make sure that vibration won't interfere with their medical equipment, and they have initially stated that it won't, but we will continue to coordinate with them as we procure the contract and bring the design builder on board. We will continue to coordinate with the city staff about limitation on overnight work. Please note that restrictions could lengthen the duration of the project and could push the closures to daytime hours when there is much higher traffic volumes. In the Lewis Creek area, depending on the final design, we may need to reconstruct a noise wall between eastbound I-90 and southeast Newport Way. Getting into the utilities, completing this project will require relocation of 3 city-owned utilities: the water line at Southeast 36th Street, the sanitary sewer line across I-90 that connects along Southeast 36th Street, and the telecommunication conduits at East Gateway and Southeast 36th Street. Washout has requested the city to enter into a cost-sharing agreement for this work, and that will continue, and the discussion will continue between Washout and the city staff. There will be some relocation of utilities in the city of Issaquah. The stormwater facility will remain in the same location. There will be minor adjustments to the overflow structure and its connection to Lewis Creek. This is necessary due to the realignment of the creek back to its original historical channel. The bottom line is that the detention pond and the pipe will remain operational at all times. And there should be no permanent effect on utilities to the City of Bellevue residents on Lakemont Boulevard. So we talked about lane closures, noise, and utilities. We can get very focused on disruptions of a construction project, but it's important for us to come back to the purpose here, which is we all have a role to play in the fish recovery. We all benefit from strong and healthy ecosystem that supports bringing back the population of the fish species, and which have been a long cultural, economic, and nutritional bedrock in the Pacific Northwest. This project has the potential to open 1.7 miles of habitat gain in Sunset Creek and 2.7 miles of habitat gain in Lewis Creek. Both are part of the tributary network that link to large lakes, Sunset Creek to Lake Washington and Lewis Creek to Lake Sammamish. The return of the natural stream condition in both locations will boost spawning and rearing, which are vital steps to improve the fish recovery rates. And this potential habitat gain is dependent on fixing other barrier culverts outside of the state's jurisdiction and beyond the scope of this project. But if all levels of government work together, we can make our public infrastructure compatible with the natural world around us. Finally, I'd like to discuss our plan to communicate with the public so that they can navigate the lane closures and other effects of their major project like this that is coming up. With project details still in flux and construction starting 2023, we are just starting to get the word out. We do engage certain stakeholders to help during the preliminary design stage. For example, the Muckleshoot Indian tribe and Snoqualmie tribe, Indian tribe, have been vital partners in designing the new stream conditions. We continue to talk with both Bellevue, and Issaquah city staff every 2 weeks. A briefing like this is a first step in getting accurate information out to the public. We will continue to engage stakeholders during the design and the RFP process. And when we do hire a design builder, we will require them to bring a dedicated communication consultant on board to lead the development of a larger outreach program and a plan. We will also need your help to get the word out. You know your city and your residents better than we do, and we will work with your city staff to ensure our outreach is both useful and informative. This concludes our presentation tonight. And so I would like to thank you for your time. And I want to give a special thanks to your city staff who have worked so hard with our project team to make this a true partnership. So, much thanks to them. And at this time, myself and my team will be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Amir, very much. So any comments or questions from any of our council members? I see council member Zahn, I see council member Barksdale. Go ahead, council member Zahn.
Yes, thank you, Amir, for the presentation. I think habitat restoration and fish passage are very important elements to our city. And so glad that WSDOT is committed to taking care of these two projects. I do have a couple of questions. And my first question is, you talked about potentially full closure of the East Gateway. And in that particular area, we are building, the Congregation for the Homeless should be finished with their project probably the end of 2022, but certainly in that time frame, you're talking about the some of the housing units that are planned to be there will be under construction. So really understanding the traffic impacts in that area will be really important. I was also trying to understand in the packet that you provided that, is this a progressive design build or traditional?
So let me answer the second question first and then maybe comment on the first one. So this is a traditional design build project. And this project, I mentioned the two culverts, but it's actually part of a much larger culvert and traditional design build project. So we have a total of 14 culverts that are part of this project. It's again, we are 2030 is approaching pretty quick, and we have a lot of culverts that we need to fix and address during that time. So, but it is a traditional design build project. Now, in regards to the options to partially close or lane closures or total closures, again, our interest is to present option that, again, anytime you close lanes or roadways, it is impactful. But what are our options to make it least impactful? Again, sometimes when you do lane closures, that slows down the progress, and so the effects of that traffic control is much longer period versus.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
So perhaps I can reframe my question. The reason I'm asking is because if we're using traditional, then your design builder is going to lock in a price as part of the competition. And then as we work together, there will be fewer opportunities to have the same level of collaboration as a progressive design build. So I want to understand why in the peninsula, those fish passage projects are going through a progressive design build where we're able to collaborate directly with the design builder as a city to make sure that we maximize the design, minimize the impacts for the best value. And in this particular case, we're not using that same kind of delivery method that might give the city and WSDOT more opportunities to innovate and have fewer impacts to our city.
Absolutely. And again, two different delivery methods, and you're absolutely correct. And so basically what we are doing down in Olympic region and Peninsula is more of like a pilot, because progressive design build is something relatively new to Washout. So we are actually watching the progress there, and future projects may be the delivery method that we will be looking at. But in terms of this particular project, Washout team will work with your city staff to explore the options that minimizes the impact and include it in the request for proposal, while encouraging the design builder to continue to work with the city on other options. But if they pull the Band-Aid option, which I would like to call it, where you close a roadway for a long weekend and to complete a work like this versus a long duration lane closures and so forth, we will explore those options with you. We will come up with a feasible design concept and then present the options to the city in terms of, we could do a longer duration single lane closures, or we can do a shorter duration full closure, and then basically work with the city to see what is acceptable.
Okay, we just want to make sure we're acting in the best interest of our community with the project. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Amir. Councilmember Barksdale, followed by Councilmember Stokes.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate this work and improving this fish passage. A couple of questions, and it might be for Bellevue City staff primarily, but I know we're updating our either water or sewer lines throughout the city. How does this work align with that in terms of opportunity to make some improvements or repairs while this is part of this work? And then secondly, is there an opportunity here to daylight any of these creeks and turn them into maybe connect some of the trails or create open space like park space and things like that?
Well, I don't want to speak for the utilities department, but I'm sure that, any type of planning that they're going to be doing would dovetail nicely with what Washout is doing, and that they would be involved with it. I can't speak to the daylighting question. I really can't.
Is anyone equipped to answer my questions?
I can speak to the daylighting. This is Ruth. I'm in the environmental at Washout, and so yeah. Whereas the existing culvert is kind of one long tube under the roads, I think one of the images showed that we're making discrete crossings. So in between each of those roadways, there will be the creek will be daylighted, and there will be opportunities for planting and having riparian area and increasing the habitat for salmon. As far as connecting that to parks, I'm not sure that I have an answer for that. I think the Mountain to Sound Trail is adjacent to the Sunset Creek? Yeah. And so I know we're having that discussion. I'm not sure if there's a direct link into kind of enhancing that part of the trail.
Okay. I would love to get some answers to those questions, I guess. I think there's opportunity here to provide better, even greater public benefit. So curious about.
Yeah, if there's particular features that we haven't captured yet as far as parks or anything, please do let us know.
As far as the trails, we do have the Mountain to Sound is perpendicular to the culvert we're replacing. So there isn't much more we can do, except we're going to, like you said, we're going to rebuild what we're destroying and replacing it. And so it will be back to the way it is. Well, it will be close because they're almost done building it right now. There is the Sunset Creek Ridge Trail. We did look at it. One of the biggest issues we have with the Sunset is that we are talking a channel that is 40 to 60 feet below the surface of the ground. So, and it's 40 to 60 feet below the existing trail that's south of our culvert. Doesn't actually go across I-90 right now. And the practicality of trying to build a trail down the 60 feet is really putting a big hamper on that effort.
We have to be engaging with our Parks Department to be having that kind of a project included in this, Andrew?
Yes, I would agree with that, and we'll engage the Parks Department.
Yeah, Okay, thank you. I guess I would love some follow-up by our staff on what this could be.
Councilmember Barksdale, we'll follow up
okay.
on your questions and provide answers to you and the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Washout welcomes any opportunities that comes from the conversation within the city with your parks department. And if there are some opportunities that has not been identified, like Tim mentioned, there are some significant challenges because 60 feet down, trying to bring a trail that far down and where the bank is going to be. If there are opportunities, we would love to discuss them with you.
One of the things we've done on other projects, and I know has been kind of discussed at a high level, is like interpretive signage along trails and whatnot. I think there's definitely room to explore that.
And we have explored it. We do have, right now we're debating between either 1 or 2 interpretive signs that we will be placing along Sunset.
Sounds like our staff will have a chance to get to know what your interests are, Councilmember Barksdale, further. Councilmember Stokes, followed by Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, I appreciate the presentation very much, and it is going to be disruptive, but for a tremendous cause. And I think in the long run, it's going to have some benefits. Just in the reconstruction of this, we know already some of the culverts have been put up in that area have really increased have diminished a lot of the runoff issues and all those kind of things too. So hopefully that'll be the same here. And as the chair of the Rye-8 Salmon Recovery Council, which represents the Cedar River, Sammamish River, and Sammamish Lake, and the whole effort is to help the whole getting the salmon back to some levels as they used to be. And we've had presentations, but I would invite you to, at some point, probably not this year, but as you get going a little further in the spring, to come to Cedar River and Rye-8 Salmon Recovery Council and talk to us about this. And we have all the cities around us and 8 groups that are working together. But just remember, this is a road thing that's being done, but the whole point of this and the reason we're doing it is because of the salmon recovery. And it's just great to see city and state and county governments actually working towards this goal and doing it in a very practical way. Unfortunately, it took years and years of litigation to get us there, but once we get to this point, I think I'm very pleased to see the work that's being done, and anything we can do collectively as a group and get information out to the cities who are affected, be glad to do that. But please, we'll get you an invitation out from the county and the cities and have some more conversations about it.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, please send me an invitation. We already have presented and quite often at the meeting for the Kokanee group, so we're more than willing.
Yeah, and we do include the Kokanee as well as the Cedar, the Chinook. So
yeah, and I guess to kind of add to that, Washout is committed to this program. We are making a significant investment to salmon recovery, and the program. I mean, we are talking about upwards of $3.8 billion program over the next what is left to 2020, basically another 8 or 9 years. So significant investment for an extremely great cost. So we are very committed to it, and this is a large part of what Washout will be working on for the next several years, and we are very proud of it.
Thank you.
Hey, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Washout and City of Bellevue has always worked very well. In my 27.5 years on the council, the projects I've seen are wonderful. It's a great collaboration. I do have, however, a concern about the traffic, the coordination, the traffic impact along Southeast 36, which is the Sunset Creek The last several months, there's been a Mountain to Sound project, and along T-Mobile, one of the lane has been closed for quite a while, and I know it just got opened. With the hospital there, we know Honda automobile, and leading to the Factoria, especially the hospital area. I think presents a very difficult, access to where people need to go, especially, for medical situations and so on. And the work just got completed. And now you are going to, and T-Mobile, of course, that is also very much impacted. That's one of the most congested road, after work hours. Has that been coordinated with the city of Bellevue? If you were going to have another disruption on the same road for 2 years, that is doesn't seem to be a good, coordination. So that surprises me, unless it's not, unless I'm wrong. But so I would like to see, what is the situation? We also, but anyway, so if you can play a few bars on that about the coordination that we've had with between Bellevue and Washout.
So, I can start, and then others from my team can chime in as well. But the FISH program, we just recently received the funding from the legislature. So in other words, before now, we just did not have the benefit of the funding that was needed to work on many of these projects. And you're absolutely correct, Council Member Lee, that ideally you get in, get the work done, and you get out and you stay out. The problem we often face is the timing of the project may not coincide with the availability of the funding. Now, we are committed to, when we say 2 years for construction, that doesn't mean that we are going to be 2 years on Southeast 36th Street. It's just the total roadway work, which the big part of it is the I-90 construction itself. So the portion, and Tim, maybe if you have some details in terms of what that duration is for the 36th Street, I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak to that. But the overall impact is 2 years, but I think the closures that we anticipate on 36th Street should be much shorter than that. Tim, do you have any more? Again, we are at the early stages of this, so there is going to be a lot more details to follow and a lot more coordination with the city. But Tim, based on the preliminary information that we have right now, do you have any more details about what we anticipate on 36th Street?
Yes, we have been working with coordination with the city. We have every 2 weeks a meeting with the city of Bellevue. And traffic control has been a major topic in most of those. And we have talked about 36. You notice we didn't mention a full closure of 36 because with city of Bellevue's concerns, they're saying that that's not an option. So we are very well listening to what we are getting feedback from the city. We also, as far as time, the construction on 36 is been estimated at 9 months, and that's a conservative estimate. We expect a design builder will come back with a considerably shorter time, but we have to look at what is the worst case scenario. And so we're looking at about 9 months of work on 36. How much will be closing of the street? We haven't gotten that detailed yet. Of a single lane closure is all we're allowed.
Right. So again, and so what this concept is, Council Member Lee, is that basically we are building half of that structure at once. So we are closing half the roadway, building that half of the structure, and then switching the traffic over and building the other half. So when you do that, it just it's going to be longer duration. But as Tim said, we are continuing to refine our schedule. And right now we have a conservative schedule, which indicates 9 months. But in working with the traffic, with the design builder, and as they are proposing, as they are developing their proposals, one of the criteria that they're going to have is reducing the closures on all of these roadways, including I-90 and as well as the city of Bellevue Street. So we expect that they're going to come in order to be the successful team to come up with concepts that would minimize or those closures. But your point is well taken in terms of multiple and independent projects impacting the same area. That is always a concern.
Well, and I have, oops, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. You want to finish?
We have been in conversation with the Honda dealership too, being the one that's most likely taking the biggest impact on this with Miss Blacken.
Yeah, okay. My concern you heard, if I am needing to go to the hospital, I drive over there, suddenly I cannot go in there. They have to turn around, go the roundabout. If I'm having a heart attack or something, it doesn't take, it's too late. So I think we need to make sure, I know you figure that out, you work well with the city. It needs to have accessibility from both sides, whether it be 1 lane, 2 lanes, 3 lanes, some way. Otherwise, people get there, it cannot go through. And they got to go around it, go backwards. And that's going through Newport Way, go down to Victoria. Or people know they're smart enough to go around I-90, go north and go around. And it's not acceptable. A lot of people don't know what to do, right? So I think there need to be provisions, consideration, seriously. We don't want to wait until people die or didn't get to the doctor in time. So it's serious, it's important. So please work with the city, figure out how to provide access from both directions.
Absolutely. Thank you. And again, we will continue to work with the city staff on options to minimize and reduce the closure. And if there are other options, we would love to explore those as well. And also, one of the criteria that we do include in our project is giving priority to emergency vehicles, fire, police, and in other words, emergency access will get a priority access through the project. But if there is backups, then that obviously would challenge that. But if we will explore opportunities to give reasonable access to the emergencies through the project area if at all possible. But I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, not when I drive a car, go to the hospital, to the clinic, I'm stopping my own vehicle. I have to wait for.
Councilmember Lee, let's get going here. Deputy Mayor, did you have anything?
I just want to be sure that you understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Deputy Mayor, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Just one quick question. First of all, Mayor, thanks for the presentation. Very worthy project. If only the funding and the projects would always align perfectly, but unfortunately they don't. But still a very worthy project for sure. I just had actually 2 quick questions for you, or hopefully quick. One is on the public engagement standpoint. You said on here that you're developing a communications plan, hiring a consultant. And then also start your outreach strategy. When is that going to start in earnest, to start alerting? It sounds like you did a little bit of that with Honda dealership already, but all the other businesses and residents that could be impacted, when does that start in earnest? And then my other question is regarding the fish recovery benefits. So a lot of the benefits are dependent on the partial or full removal of other culvert barriers. I know that's not part of this project, but I'm wondering, is that a part of another project, or is that on any other type of timeline right now to take care of those as well, to see the full benefits of this project? Thank you.
Sure, and I guess I will bring our team members to help answer those questions. In terms of the other culverts that would be downstream or upstream of this culvert, it is, unfortunately, those are outside of Washout's jurisdiction. However, Washout is always looking for opportunities for partnership. So if there is an agency, City of Bellevue or others that are out there that are interested to partner to get that work done at the same time, we would love to hear about that. But basically what we are doing is we are opening up this major barrier, and then other partners have the opportunity to either at the same time or later on down the road, take care of those other culverts. Right now, removing those barriers would not do any good until this I-90 barrier is removed. But once this barrier is removed, then really it should elevate the benefits of investing in those other barriers and removing them, and we welcome that. Ruth, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that there is grant funding for, and you get higher scoring when you're adjacent to a washout crossing often, because those are known to be to have a lot of habitat benefit. And so that's called the Fish Barrier Removal Board. I'm sure John Stokes is very familiar with that. And so that's one option. And then I know some, as Amir said, we're always happy to share our data, to share studies, to share what we know about the stream with other project partners who want to continue the work. Happy to give advice and whatnot. I know some jurisdictions have plans to they've assessed all of their barriers and have a plan to remove them. That's something Washout's working through. So, and then we're all under the same state laws to replace our barriers as well.
And on the outreach question that you had, so Chris Olson is our, I'm going to bring Chris on board here in terms of our communication plan for this project. But again, this is, so we are already in discussion with some of the affected businesses, like Kim mentioned with the Honda dealer. We are already in communication with them. We want to figure out what the impacts are and what the options are for us to provide them access to throughout the life of this project. But like I mentioned, as far as the hiring a consultant, it's not basically we are putting it part of the requirement for the design builder to hire a team to basically for this public outreach. So they are going to have team members that are going to be working with Chris and the Washout communication team in developing an outreach plan in coordination with the City of Bellevue and others to make sure that it is meeting the needs of the community and the jurisdictions and city, like the City of Bellevue. So Chris, you want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, I think you really sort of captured all of it very well there, Amir. Yes, I expect that between now and next spring, we'll continue to have conversations, particularly with businesses in that area that are going to be most directly affected. So these will be, I don't want to say behind the scenes conversations, but they are more like one-on-one type conversations with them. And then once we get into the RFP, and we get that design builder hired with the dedicated communications consultant team, I expect they will really then start developing those more public outreach plans. It's difficult to tell the public at this point kind of really what to expect when we don't know what the successful design proposer is going to propose for efficiencies and durations. I don't want to say, we don't want to go out to the public and say we're going to close, one direction of I-90 or lanes on I-90 for, 6 months, and then the design builder comes back and says something else. So it's really kind of important to get that schedule from the design builder. But I think that there will be, and it'll be a fairly comprehensive plan. And it's always a little bit hard to tell right now what that's going to look like because we're still in this virtual situation. So I don't know whether we're going to be able to do virtual things or in-house things. We just kind of have to wait or in-person things, excuse me. we're just gonna have to wait and see a little bit how this plays out.
Thank you.
And then I guess my only question is, I wondered if you could put signs up during this construction that says we're doing a fish passage restoration project so that people understand that there's value to the inconvenience.
Absolutely. So let's put, we may already have plans for that, Tim, but if that hasn't, I mean, that's an excellent point, Mayor Robinson. So we will put that on our list of to-do list. And I think people need to understand, especially if the roadway looks the same after 2 years of inconvenience. So what has Washout done here? So I think we do need to put the right messaging out there so people know that the benefit is actually to the fish and not necessarily to the roadway. So excellent point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, thanks for the presentation.
Mayor?
Oh, yes, Councilmember Zahn.
I still have 2 more questions and a comment.
Okay, we'll go back around then, starting with Councilmember Zahn.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that I understand. It talked about cost sharing on the utilities. What's the cost to the city of that from a ROM standpoint? And is that part of our CIP already in terms of paying for that? So that's question 1.
Well, I mean, our utilities team, Washout utilities team and city utilities team are right now looking at that in terms of where the jurisdictions are. For example, if the city is on a franchise going through the limited access, so what is the city's responsibility for that versus the area outside of the limited access that the city owns the right of way and the right for the utility to be there. So again, we are sorting all of that out right now. So when we talk about cost sharing, really it goes down to who's responsible for what, and then make sure that we are all on the same page and planning for the funding associated with it. Washout as part of the project and the city basically meeting its obligation under the whatever agreement we already have with between Washout and the city.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is you don't actually have the ROM of the cost yet, because you explained the process, but I was asking about the ROM. That's okay. That maybe that's something the staff could get back to me on. And then the second one I think that I heard my colleagues talk about is that while we're here, there may be an opportunity for us to look at some betterments for the habitat and the enabling projects next to it that we may choose to do so that we actually do have a full salmon and fish habitat. So I'm wondering if the staff can actually come back and provide us with some information about what those projects might be. Are they already on our CIP? What kind of cost are they and what grant opportunities there might be? And then whether it can fit within this particular project so that there's not multiple mobilizations and demobes, and it could be part of this project that the city would pay for that part of the project. And it does look like the timing is critical because the RFP is looking at April of 2022. So if we want to include anything in that scope, it seems like the window is not very wide for us to vote on that as a policy of what we might want to fund.
Deputy Mayor, excuse me, City Manager, Mr. Miyake, would you like to weigh in here?
Sure, I just wanted to, Councilmember Zahn and I had a brief conversation about this earlier, some of these questions. Councilmember Zahn, we will certainly provide some answers to you in the council on the detailed questions we talked about this afternoon.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think those are really important pieces because I hear interest from my fellow council members.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Barksdale.
No further questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Stokes.
I'm fine.
Councilmember Lee.
Nothing further.
Okay, and Deputy Mayor?
No further questions or comments. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, I think we'll wrap this up then. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce the next study session item?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council members. The second study session topic this evening is an informational update on the implementation of the city's affordable housing strategy. And just by way of background, as you recall, Bellevue adopted the affordable housing strategy in June of 2017 as a way to improve affordable housing opportunities across the city. The City Council has been receiving updates twice a year on the implementation progress of the strategy itself. And the briefing tonight will include a progress since the adoption of the affordable housing strategy, also provide an overview of significant ongoing efforts to further affordable housing actions in the city, and a review of potential future affordable housing ideas, and staff plans to engage stakeholders and return to the council for discussion in early 2022. Joining us this evening is Matt Cummins, the director of our community development, as well as Emil King, assistant director, Tara Johnson, as well as our new staff member who specializes in affordable housing, Anthony Jarvis. Again, this is an informational update and no formal action is being asked of council this evening. And with that, I'll turn it over to Matt Cummins. Matt?
Thank you, City Manager Miyake. Mayor and Council, it's good to be back with you this evening talking about affordable housing and where we're at in terms of the implementation of our 2017 affordable housing strategy. In our last couple updates with you all, we've had a lot of discussions about the affordable housing strategy from 2017, how aggressive it is, whether or not the city should be looking at more aggressive policy and or implementation tools. And it's absolutely one of the most pervasive public policy discussions going on in the community. And when I say community, not just the residents of our community, but our business community, the development community. It's a big topic regionally. You may recall that in some of our regional work, we've talked about the fact that the overall region is short tens of thousands of housing units, and that's putting extra pressure on the affordability index. So what we usually do in our affordable housing updates is give the council a rundown on the affordable housing strategy and each of the individual implementation vehicles, the mechanisms, and talk about how many units they've created. We're going to do that, but we're also going to do a few other things tonight. So to remind the council, these are information only study sessions. We are not seeking any decision from the council tonight, but we are going to look at a few things that we don't always update you all on because we've had kind of a standard rhythm to the updates. So if we go to the next slide, I want to talk about what the agenda is going to look like for tonight. So generally speaking, we always start with the affordable housing strategy, how it was adopted, how it's set into major key theme areas. We think that's important for any members of the public that are watching to be grounded in the city's adopted policies. We'll of course give you the normal update on how many units have been created to date. The spoiler alert is you have a whole lot of units in the pipeline that are about to be permitted and come out of the ground or be converted. And the reason for that is a lot of the policy actions that the council has taken in the last 6 months. So we're going to walk you through all of those things and where we're at. We are way on our way to achieving the 2,500 units that are contemplated in the affordable housing plan. But as I talked about earlier, we're going to be talking to you a little bit tonight also about the ongoing body of work, which is going to stretch through the fourth quarter of this year and into the first quarter of next year. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about future housing work and how a process is going to come together to start to look at prioritizing a number of actions and implementation tools that may be a little bit more in the bold category that you've all talked about wanting to get more information about, and have really come up in a variety of different forums. And so I'll give you a recap on that when we get towards the end. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Assistant Director Emil King, who's going to walk through where we're at with the strategy right now. And then we'll move into the status of the current work and then get to the future work.
Thanks, Mac. Tara Johnson and I will be sharing the next dozen slides or so. And I think, Tara, I'm going to let you go ahead and provide an update on the affordable housing strategy, and then I'll go into some of the accomplishments and current work that we're doing. Thanks, Tara.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Emil. Thanks, Mac. Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhouse, and members of the public that are here this evening. So as Mac provided a brief overview and intro, what we're going to do next is provide kind of our standard update that we provide to City Council twice a year and go over the success that we've achieved and progress that we've made since we've last came to you earlier this year. So just to provide a little bit more context, and particularly for members of the public that are present and tuning in this evening, we wanted to provide a little bit of background on the affordable housing strategy. As we'll talk about later on as part of this presentation, and you've heard comments from staff already, affordable housing continues to be a significant and substantive priority for the City Council and for the city. Which is very evident in the updated council priorities that recently were adopted. So a little bit of background, the affordable housing strategy was adopted in 2017 and incorporates about five overall strategies and 21 actions that are tied to those strategies. In addition, we've been working and made substantive progress towards achieving the goal, the 2,500 units over a 10-year period. And as is evident in the next couple slides, we'll go over some of the metrics that we've been utilizing to measure the progress. In addition, affordable housing has also been a topic of conversation. We recently had a community forum on affordable housing a couple weeks ago, and we'll be providing an overview of some of the feedback that we received at that neighborhood meeting as well. So a little bit on metrics, which is something I know council looks forward to. So wanted to really highlight in total, we've achieved since adoption of the affordable housing strategy, we've achieved a total of 1,354 units. But of particular note, wanted to really emphasize what we've achieved since we last came to you earlier this year, which was March of 2021. Since then, Council has made taken some significant actions towards affordable housing. A couple months ago, Council moved forward with providing additional funding to assist in terms of partnerships with the Elahi Apartments. So that provided 36 additional units. We also City Council also enacted a decision to contribute additional funding towards Plymouth and the Eastgate Supportive Housing Project that would elicit another 95 additional units. So, so there's been some substantive progress since we last came to you a few months ago, and so wanted to really highlight that for the City Council and for the public. In addition, I think we spoke in the introductory remarks to several projects that are in the pipeline. So we have about 772 anticipated units in the 2021 to 2023 timeline. That includes units that utilize land use incentives for Bellevue and downtown. We also have Council recently enacted changes to our MFTE ordinance. And so under that, we're anticipating some additional 200 units. These, of course, are already in the pipeline, so not under the new code, but we do anticipate that there'll be additional utilization of the MFTE provisions. And then we talked about the Eastgate already, that City Council awarded funding towards, and then we're anticipating 80 additional units there. The OMFE TOD site, anticipating about 250 units, and then the 130th Station TOD as well, another 150 units there. So with that, I think I'm going to turn things over to Emil, who's going to talk through the next group of topics, which is relating to implementation of actions, and take us through some additional discussion points.
Thank you, Tara. I'd like to now focus on the actions that staff are currently undertaking and some of the accomplishments since our last update 6 months ago. As context, in May of this year, Council approved an update to your 3-year priorities for 2021 to 2023. Of the 22 priorities, one is to continue to implement the 2017 Affordable Housing Strategy. A couple noteworthy additions in this update by Council were to look at code amendments instead of comprehensive plan amendments to get more affordable housing, and also strengthening the housing bonus program. Next slide, please, Tara. We last updated Council in March of 2021. Over those past 6 months, we've reached a number of milestones with very noteworthy accomplishments. Staff worked with the Planning Commission and Council to put in place regulations that address minimum parking for residential with good transit access, as well as specific provisions for affordable housing. This will make projects more feasible in targeted areas where alternative transportation options are available. This summer, as Tara mentioned, Council updated the city's multifamily tax exemption program. The goal was to maximize usage of the system while meeting city policy objectives. With this new program, we're already seeing new projects want to use the new provisions, and we hope to see significant increase over past years as far as usage of this program. As part of the first year of the 1590 sales tax revenues, Council allocated $1.66 million to 19 groups to use for needed housing-related human services. This summer, Council also made $8 million of investments towards 3 projects, as Tara mentioned. The Eastside Men's Shelter and Eastside Supportive Housing requested supplemental funding that the city was able to help out with. And the city partnered with King County Housing Authority and Amazon to preserve 36 units in the Bellevue area for the Illahee project. And finally, the first request for proposals for 1590 sales tax capital funding was released, and we received applications on the September 30th deadline. Next slide, please, Tara. City staff are undertaking a significant body of work right now, as shown on this slide. We've added new staff in recent months, both in community development and development services, to focus on code and policy work. Caleb Miller, who's been before you at Council, joined the city a few months ago in development services. And Anthony Avery, who's listening along, joined the city in recent weeks, and both of them are already making great contributions to our housing work. I've noted on this slide when the next touch point with Council is going to be made for each of these topics, and also what is known now regarding estimated affordable housing unit production for each one of these ongoing efforts. When added onto the roughly 1,300 units that Tara mentioned earlier, it's estimated that with these actions, we'll be able to surpass the current target of 2,500 units over a 10-year period. The East Main Land Use Code Amendment and Affordable Housing Incentive System are currently being reviewed by Council, with wrap-up to occur as early as the end of this year. Staff continue ongoing work with Sound Transit at the development site just south of the light rail maintenance base in Bellevue, and also on the current partnership opportunity at the 130th station in Bellevue further to the east. Based on direction from Council in August, staff is planning to return in November to discuss the supportive housing best practices relating to outreach and service levels. The C1 density bonus for faith-based, nonprofit, and public lands will be discussed with Council later this year, with a staff recommendation for some potential map amendments to be reviewed next year. And as noted earlier, the 1590 sales tax RFP was issued earlier this year, with applications received just 2 weeks ago. Staff plans to return to Council in January to review staff's recommendations for capital fundings in this first round. There's also work planned to assess the potential bonding of a portion of the 1590 revenues that would allow for a greater near-term investment. In addition, the city is also readying to update the 2015-2016 housing needs assessment that was a foundational piece of the 2017 affordable housing strategy. This work is very important because it's going to be a key as the city considers potential future actions to pursue related to affordable housing. Staff will also brief council in early 2022 on the private applications for comp plan amendment consideration. Each of the two private applications this year do have a key relationship to affordable housing, as we'll be describing to you in January. Staff also continues to work on potential funding partnerships with entities such as large employers, financial institutions, foundations, and others. And finally, the pre-launch work is being done right now with staff so that when East Main is wrapped up, we can consider the timing for the launch of the Wolverton Vision implementation, which is a noteworthy project on the council's radar. Next slide, please, Tara. I'd like to wrap up my portion with talking about the remaining 2017 affordable housing strategy items. So as the council thinks about its next body of work in Q1 of 2022, some of the items for consideration may come from this list. CD and DSD staff will be scoping how micro apartments could be encouraged in station areas. This was one of the actions from 2017. There was also an action relating to detached accessory dwelling units in the strategy. The most recent work by the city was on removing what was called the 3-year rule for attached ADUs and also modifying the parking. The affordable housing strategy also included actions on promoting universal design to help with aging in place and providing more flexibility for who's able to live in those units. And finally, were actions relating to funding home repair and weatherization, as well as promoting energy efficient design to reduce costs for residents in housing units in Bellevue. I'd like to now hand things back over to Mac to complete our presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Emil. Before I jump into the recent community forum, just to reinforce a couple of things as Emil was just walking through there are a number of decision points that are coming to you pretty quickly here in the fall that have the opportunity for the biggest moves out of the 2017 affordable housing strategy. So if you go back to that document, it identifies how many units each of the strategies were meant to potentially produce out of that 2,500. The C1 strategy and using up zones as an opportunity to create housing and more affordable housing are two of the biggest moves. And as you all know, the East Main discussion is robust right now moving forward. And the C1 discussion has recently concluded at the Planning Commission and will be to you. So as we bring each of these things forward to you kind of one at a time, we'll do our best to make sure and fit it into context. I think one of the good things about doing an overall affordable housing update is you can see all those things all in one place at the same time. I'd be happy to put that slide back up at the end if council has some questions on that work and when it's coming back to you. Wanted to comment a little bit on a recent community forum. So we organize neighborhood leadership gatherings roughly once a quarter. And we decided that we wanted to host one on affordable housing and get out and talk to residents in our community about what their thoughts were. And we did that on September 23rd. And we had an incredibly well-attended event. North of 100 people hopped on the phone call, and it was a very thoughtful, engaging conversation with the residents about what they were seeing, how they were feeling, and what they thought the city should be looking at and thinking about relative to affordable housing. Some of the main concerns that were raised at that discussion related to concerns around being able to age in place, concerns around longtime residents who were realizing their children couldn't afford any type of housing unit here in the city, and thinking and wanting to talk about how to be strategic in going forward. There was very much unison and agreement that this is one of the most pressing policy issues facing the city today. And there were a lot of really good ideas that were thrown out that they were all hoping that we could report back to the city council to get into the hopper to talk about. And some of these things relate to the need for more housing types. So the idea that rather than just having a plethora of single family housing, the city would consider more duplexes or triplexes. There was definitely split opinions, but a number of people asked the city to consider accessory dwelling units on single family lots and wanted that to continue to move forward. And as you all know, that's part of the neighborhood planning process at this point. There was also discussion around the need for more senior housing. So the community is seeing the population aging and the need to create more housing specifically for seniors. So when we looked at all of that, a number of these concepts are going to be built into our housing needs assessment that Assistant Director King commented on a few minutes ago, which will become the backbone of the major comprehensive plan update relative to thinking about housing, unit production, and how that's all going to work relative to our growth targets. So what you'll see in sequence is an affordable housing strategy that gets implemented, but at the same time, long-range planning. And a number of you have asked questions about how that works. As Emil said, we'll be bringing back and working through the housing needs assessment through the next probably 2 quarters or so. And then that starts to feed into that major comp plan update. So it was a really good forum, very, very positive. Even though there was disagreements, all of the residents were really excited to be engaging with the city. So why don't we hop onto the next slide? I want to talk a little bit about the future of our housing program. So the City Council has asked us to think big and to think bold about the topic of housing production and specifically around affordable housing. So what we did was go back and take a look at the 2017 Affordable Housing Strategy. We went back through the Technical Advisory Group, or TAG work for short, to see what types of strategies were discussed at that time. And we blended a number of those topical areas with all of our ongoing dialogues out in the community. And by community, there are nonprofit housing providers and developers. We spend a lot of time with the Chamber of Commerce, the BDA. A number of our large employers, as you all know, have wanted to be funding partners and or be very involved in the affordable housing discussion. There's a lot of comments out there about the jobs housing imbalance right now and the rate at which we're growing in jobs. So what we did here was put together a list of things. Nearly every single thing on this list as a tactic has already been discussed at one point with the city. Almost all of it comes from the TAG work, but we wanted to put it together for you all and talk about what the process will look like going into the first quarter and second quarter of next year, where some prioritization discussion will need to happen so that we can hone in on the work for 2022. And we want to talk a little bit specifically about what some of those things are. So as I was just mentioning, thinking about a range of housing ownership models from attached units, people might call this condos for short, or townhomes or duplexes, different typologies, and where those might be best suited or best located geographically. That's a topic that we've done a lot of thinking about and we'll want to talk to the council more about. Emil commented on the potential for rezones instead of comprehensive plan amendments. That's a concept that came out of your strategic plan last year. And we're looking forward to getting back with you all and talking a little bit more about the specifics of what that might mean to you all as a council, and then working that through. There's been some ideas out there about land acquisition. We are certainly doing things like public-private joint ventures. We've done it with Sound Transit. We are working on the 130th Avenue project. And of course, cities have different approaches to development and expected rates of return than a typical market rate developer. So there are plenty of ideas out there about how we can do more OMF or 130th style projects. Talk about a minimum housing requirement and what a framework for that may look like. So as you all know, as we're working through the East Main upzoning, there's discussions around what the minimum housing number should be. And we think that a certain amount of discussion with you all may help the Wilburton and or Bell Red lookbacks or any future work in downtown if we set some policy around what that would be. And it would also allow us to build that into our major comp plan update and create policy around jobs housing imbalance and exactly how we're going to use the upzones to help solve that problem. The last two I want to hit, these are potentially very big moves. Mandatory inclusionary housing is a concept that came up during the TAG work in 2017. Council will know, and for those of you that were on council at the time will remember, that the city decided not to take that up and rather look at an incentive-based strategy. Over time, we have decided to put most of our effort into the regulatory updates like the MFTE things that have been recently done. And those types of policy changes have really set up what would now be really the right time to take that conversation back up should council decide to do that. And mandatory inclusionary housing is something that a lot of cities have used through the years to help create that necessary affordable housing. In fact, Bellevue had a mandatory inclusionary housing program at one time in the 1990s. So at the right time here in the later fall, we'll be bringing that back to you and talking about what that might look like. And then lastly, the current affordable housing strategy lists creating potential new revenue sources as a specific strategy. And the ideas around creating linkage fees around new commercial development is something that's getting a lot of discussion out in housing advocacy circles, as well as amongst a number of our nonprofits. And a number of those folks have indicated that at the appropriate time, they would like to weigh in with the city council relative to whether or not that's an appropriate tool here in Bellevue. And ideas around a housing levy of some sort have also been discussed in a lot of those same circles. That would certainly be an opportunity to create revenue should the city decide to go down that path. So I think what you'll see on this list, and of course there are a number of other sub items, there are some big move things that are on this list and potentially very much in the category of being bold. What we're going to do over the next probably 3 to 5 months is be creating input forums, and we will be handling all of the outreach to all the different various stakeholders. So we have a business community, we have the large employers, potential funding partners, we have work with the state, we work with a whole host of people that want to weigh in on the regulatory side of all these things. And we imagine a series of those conversations ongoing where the city staff would coordinate all of that so that we could bring back to you a universal document, if you will, of what those various concerns are. Now, one of the things that we have observed so far, because we're having a lot of these conversations, albeit informally right now, is that there really is alignment in what a lot of those various interests are trying to achieve coming out of the program. And everybody wants to see more affordable housing. So sometimes when you say that all those different interests, it may sound like there's going to be divergent opinions about a number of concepts. We're actually finding that there's a lot of symmetry in what people are starting to think about. So what we'll be doing is starting that exercise sometime in the next couple of months, and we'll keep council updated. Ideally then coming back to talk to the council about prioritization sometime after the first of the year. And again, that's dependent on working through a number of those ongoing things that are also big moves that you saw on the other slide. So to finish up, city is being super aggressive in the affordable housing arena. We are going to blow past our 2,500 unit goal. And then depending on what we do with some of the big moves like C1, we could end up significantly past that. So at this point, we're not asking for any direction tonight. Again, it was really just to provide council an update with where we are on our affordable housing work in general. We are just bringing on some of the new staff, such as Anthony, and so we're looking forward to, he'll hit the treadmill moving 100 miles an hour here as we're looking at the end of the fall and into the winter time. So I think I'll go ahead and stop there, and we're happy to take any questions or comments that council has, Mayor.
Terrific. Thank you very much. I'm actually going to start, and then I'll go with Councilmember Barksdale, Deputy Mayor, Councilmember Lee. I see Councilmember Zahn. I'm sure Councilmember Stokes wants to say something. I haven't seen his hand yet. But I'll just say I really appreciate this update. It really is informative, and it gives me hope that we're making a dent in the challenge. It's never going to be enough, but there's only so much we can do at this point, and it feels like we're doing a lot, and there's still a lot more to do. And I agree with everything on slides 14 and 15. But if I was going to prioritize things, I would prioritize micro housing without parking requirements and TOD. I think that's something that is completely missing and really addresses our public speakers' comments that were made tonight. I would like an emphasis on 3 bedrooms because that's what our families need. And it's really expensive to build those, but if we can try to identify older buildings that have 3-bedroom units and try to retain those, I think that would be very effective. I like the work on the home ownership models. That is missing from our program. Very interested in discussing the mandatory inclusionary housing. And I would, you have talking about bonding 1590 money in Q2, Q3. Boy, I'd move that up to Q1. I think that we need to move on that quickly. So those are just my comments. Let's hear from Councilmember Barksdale.
Right, thank you, Mayor. So really quick question in terms of DADUs and the community forum. I'm curious if anyone made a connection between the ability for DADUs to help mitigate the mega mansions by providing the option, a better option for using the land. So that's one. Secondly, do we have an idea of what rate of production is needed in order to reach the, I guess not because we haven't done the needs assessment, but I would like to know what rate of production we would need to achieve year over year in order to meet our target based on the needs assessment. And then I'm curious if there's a way for us to apply some sort of trigger, like look at these strategies, start working through those, and then say, if we're not hitting a particular percentage or target year over year at some point, then we automatically kick in, for example, mandatory inclusionary zoning or something else, right? As opposed to kicking the can down the road. How can we say if we're not getting what we need and we know we need X, Y, Z and it's a growing number, then we're gonna start automatically including activating something that will provide it.
So thank you, council member. I can answer a couple of those here. So you asked a question about whether or not at the community forum there was a direct linkage between McMansions and ADUs. That did not come up in the way you just described as a potential mitigation to stopping McMansions. We did hear comments about not liking the McMansionization, and some particular neighborhoods were listed off more than others. In terms of the ADUs, there were split opinions about whether or not that would substantially alter the character of a neighborhood or be detrimental, in some ways. But there were a lot of very positive comments around that topic as well. I want to touch a little bit on the rate of production question, because we are going to be trying to put together data for you along those lines when we do our housing needs assessment. So one of the things that I think is most misunderstood about our affordable housing strategy from 27 is the 2,500 units was not the need, quote unquote, that the city was trying to aim for. That was a number that is derived from what is likely going to be produced if you implement all the tools that are in that document. And what I've heard a number of the council members say is that maybe we should be looking more at what the need is and taking a hard look at that type of number rather than what certain tools may yield in terms of affordable housing. So, and of course, when you're in such a desirable area, we're going to see a lot of need. Whether or not, we can achieve something like that number, that's something we'll have to talk with you all about when we get to the needs assessment. But yes, we'll be taking a look at what that actual housing production needs to look like and its impact on affordability and then potential tools to get there.
And any thoughts on the trigger concept? Like if we're not meeting a certain level year over year, then we just automatically start activating other tools that will allow or get us closer to that need?
Yeah, I think that'd be a question for you all when we get to the prioritization for the need number itself. So for example, in the current affordable housing strategy, we knew it would be more backloaded than front loaded because it wasn't all implemented at once. And so it was more of a curve to get from, like, the first couple of years, you were doing all the adoption of the new policy, and now we're seeing the production as a result. So it's not a linear graph really in most situations. And as we talk to you all, if we do some of those big move items, you may see lots of production in the first few years, compared to the last few years, be almost an inverted curve to what we've seen the last couple of years. So yeah, happy to talk with you all about that as we get a little bit closer.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, because I think it gets kind of lost sometimes just because of this, the great need that we have right now in our community. But staff has done just such a tremendous job on this. And it is just incredible in terms of the amount of things that we have done or that we are ongoing right now. I'm not sure there's another municipality out there that's doing as much as we are as a city in the city of Bellevue. So I really want to make sure you understand those kudos are authentic and real. And it's amazing what we're doing. Yes, of course, we need to do more, but we did set that goal for 2,500. We're going to blow past that. And it really shows that a lot of these incentives are working as well as we gain more momentum here. So I really am a fan of that focus, and I really appreciate all the outreach as well and the constant looking at the needs assessment as well. And Mac, I appreciate you bringing that up about the fact that that was really, that number was really based on what we think we could generate, not necessarily what the needs are in the community. And that's a really big part of it. I look forward to more data on that. And then as well as when you come back to us in the future, we'd really like to know more about in terms of how are we going to look at some of these strategies in terms of what other cities are doing, what ones work, what don't, what we might want to look at. And I'm particularly interested, for one example, aging in place with senior housing. What are some examples, Mac, that you might have right now that are working in other communities that we might be able to implement? And lastly, I really hope that we're going to continue to focus on those strategies that are going to have the biggest bang for their buck. I'm all for looking very holistically and looking as many ways as possible that we can grow our affordable housing units in the city. But I also want to make sure that we keep a real keen eye and laser focus on those that are going to have the biggest benefit to our residents. And I think the mayor touched on a little bit in terms of the micro housing and TOD areas and the growth corridors. Those are ones that are really going to move the needle, in my opinion. But I'll stop there and Mac, let you address a few. But again, great presentation. Thanks, Mac, Emil, and Thera.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, the aging in place concept is something we'll want to bring back, a very robust discussion for you all. One of the big factors in aging in place is size of unit, total amount of maintenance, things that you either don't want to do or have more difficulty doing in aging. And then, of course, the financial part of owning big properties or big houses. So generally speaking, creating different housing typologies that create, for example, main floor masters and smaller units and smaller lots or townhomes or duplexes. Those kinds of things become very attractive to seniors that want to move out of their traditional single family home. And there really is a very broad spectrum of senior housing, from very self-sufficient on site through assisted living, and then into other housing types with other services. So that's the kind of thing we'd want to look at very holistically and bring back to you all, because there are definitely options there that we could probably help facilitate different product types.
Great. Thanks, Mac.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Bellevue has done more in affordable housing in the last 6 months than any city in the region has. It's amazing when Bellevue start doing something, how well they can do. And I think it depends a lot on staff. Staff knows how to come up with solutions, but they need to understand what the needs are, talk to the community, find out the real need, the support we get, from the city residents, because that's where the needs are, okay? And I want to give credit to, some of the politicians as well, the leadership. I want to give credit to Mayor, for initiating, and, in a way, focusing and pushing this issue so that the staff can actually work on it. And, I'm very glad that Bellevue staff has always done a good job. If they don't do their work, if just us talking about what we each want, we'll never get anything done. They are there to listen to our guidance, our suggestion, our insight, our support. And I think that's very valuable. But the rest of it is up to them. And they've done a great job. Bellevue has always done that. 30 years ago, we started ARCH. ARCH actually is a housing program, how to address housing people, taking care of them from their plight, from their situation, like, transitional women, families, from their situation with the youth, with the whatever. And then it goes to men. And this now, we have a different situation. It's voting that we have, the housing situation for. It's not just one population, it's all of us. It's people getting younger. 30 years ago, it's a younger girl. Now we're getting older. We are looking for aging in place. How do we want to do it? We got to figure out. And the staff will figure it out as long as they talk to the right people, talk to the right community, and give the guidance that we have to encourage them. And I think that's great. One thing, talking about, the staff, Mac mentioned, he'll bring back information to us, get us involved, we can provide some directions. I believe this is where we need to go. The guidance, the input, the assessment is really in the community. So I strongly agree with the staff's recommendation. Needs assessment is very important. We need to get more data, like Deputy Mayor always asks for data. And we need to make sure we educate the public. The public only also knows some of the pieces. That's why it's our job to bring them together. And I want to ask people, this is an issue that we've been working on for the last 7, 8 years. We have gone through 2 re-election efforts, and housing is very important. It's an issue everybody knows, but they need to know, what do we mean by affordable housing? What do we mean by affordable housing? What do we mean by HDAU? What do we mean by micro housing? So that they can make choices and decisions that we support it. If they don't understand it, especially Bellevue residents, if they don't understand something, they don't know how to give their choices. So we need to educate them. I really want to promote, if I finish, I think we need to have a real education program to the Bellevue residents from all different kinds of housing, understanding the needs of each. Then we will put our money where our mouth is. We can do it without every time controversial arguing, because we only need one piece of elephant. You touch the ears, oh, this is what it looks like. Tail is what it looks like. Then you start arguing. This is not it. I don't need this. No, we need to know the overall housing picture, and we'll get behind it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, let's see, we're on to Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, this is really good report. I like I think there's just been a tremendous movement from what we've been talking about over the last couple of years in this. A couple of things I want to touch on. One is that I do have a question about why we continue to count this overall number of affordable housing we've achieved by listing preserved units, and I can understand a little bit of temporary shelter. Yes, we're getting some people housed for a while. But the biggest emphasis we had, and the reason I really got engaged in developing the strategy in the beginning, was that we need more housing. We need to preserve housing we have and get people in there. But if we don't preserve those houses, they're going to be homeless. So that's a good thing. And we'd have to provide housing for them. But the whole focus was on, we need more housing. And so they're all parts of it, but sometimes we end up with an overall goal and say, hey, we're doing great, when in fact the number of new housing is not up to what we want to do. So I think you're talking about that and focusing more, and I agree with that. And I really like the idea we're going to blow past 2,500. I mean, that was frankly, if we were doing that again, we'd have come up with something better, but that was part of the thing going on at that time. And what I think we have to keep this, and again, I like the approach, and I don't want to repeat all the stuff you said, because I think you've laid this out in a way we haven't had laid out to us ever, frankly. And I really appreciate that from staff. We've done a lot of good. I don't think we are necessarily the champions of the region. There are other cities who are doing some really innovative things and increasing more housing. for their side. So it's good to pat ourselves on the back, but it's also good to challenge ourselves to do a whole lot better. And I think we can. I think we have the elements here. And what is fascinating about this time period is that when we were doing this in 2017, we were really moving something that hadn't been done a lot, but it was a different world then. And I think, and coming up with 2,500 at the time was kind of a compromise. We didn't know what to peg it on and all that. So what we're reaching for now, what you're presenting us, is a real solid, connected proposal for going forward. And I was waiting for you to talk, Mac, about, when were we going to do these next things? I was hoping it wasn't a long time out. And when you said we're going to be starting on, now and going forward, I think that's what we need to do. And, I think that we're in a position with things that are happening now where housing in Bellevue, housing in the area is going to be even more important. It's the most important public policy issue to tackle at this stage. And I can talk a long time about this, but I think you're breaking it down in a very clear way to get to these things in place. I think we need to have this kind of soul searching ourselves now, that kind of like we did in 2017 when we were really not doing a whole lot. Art and others have done great work, but this is just such a great bigger magnitude. I just think we're in a period where we have the opportunity with the business community, with the community, and talking to the community as a different groups out there, that the world is changing and this city's changing. And this is the big area that we're going to have to change. And I think people are beginning to understand that. I think that's good. So I'm really pleased. A whole lot, as I said, a lot of the stuff I'd comment on. I think we need to go big in a really big way here, and we can do it. So I'm looking forward. Thank you very much, staff, for the presentation and putting this together. And what I like is I think there's heart in this as well as the mind and the professionalism. It's the heart is in this, and I see that, and that's what we need in Bellevue, and what we as a council will do, and the staff is doing this too. I think we're going to get there. I don't have any questions to ask. There are a lot of other things we could talk about, but I'm very pleased with the shift in a way, or upgrading the presentation in a more comprehensive way, and I think that's really going to be helpful. And looking forward to us having these conversations over the next few months about where are we really going to go? What are our really big plans because this city has just fundamentally changed in the last 4 or 5 years. And we're at a point where if we don't tackle this and make this work, the rest of this could kind of come to a standstill in a sense. So this is probably the most crucial issue we're facing in this time and going forward as a city, is how can this be a livable city for everybody? How can we be equitable? How can we do this work? And if this city can't do it, I don't think anybody can. I think we can do it. So just want to say thank you very much for putting this together, and looking forward to making progress on this and making the hard decisions that we need to do. Thank you.
I like Councilmember Stokes' call to action. That's good. Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Welcome, Anthony, and thank you, Thera, Emil, and Mac. Great work in summarizing all of this for us. I agree with the discussion around making sure that as we look at, just like with East Main, looking at Warburton, Bell Red, and other areas, to look at minimum housing requirements so that we don't miss out on that opportunity. I am excited that in our council priorities and values that we've said that housing abounds with many choices and a range of affordability levels, and that in the neighborhood forums, we're also actively talking about it, and the community is very engaged in this work as well. I believe that we do need to align our targets with the growing needs. 2012 is not the same as what we were looking at in 2016 when this work was going on and the study and the strategies were published. we need to be a lot more bold, all hands on deck. I believe that we should be looking at all of the options available. Yes, there will be some that will net more scale in terms of affordable housing. But if we're really talking about having affordable housing throughout the city, then we need to look at all of those options that are available, especially when we're looking at 35,000 more people in Bellevue by 2044, making sure that we have the very housing for them. A couple of things I do want to highlight. I agree with the mayor, the bonding of the 1590 sooner rather than later, because I do believe that when we review the proposals that have come in and also looking at the needs going forward, it's not getting any less expensive to purchase land or build affordable housing. So to the degree that we can leverage the bonding will be important. I appreciate the fact that you've added something in there about looking at the energy efficiency so that for the homeowners, they are not going to be paying higher energy bills. And it's also important for sustainability. So as we build affordable housing, I want to make sure that they are also sustainable and environmentally sustainable type of units as well. On the micro housing, I also agree with the mayor about micro housing without parking and really looking at how we can incent or encourage that type of housing. And it goes to, I don't know if dorm style housing is the right word for it, but the idea that we could look at universal designs that have, right, maybe some common shared spaces, but individual bedrooms so that the cost per each is a little more affordable. And it also creates a bit of more of that, that community feel for those that want that type of housing. I don't know that there are very many of that type in Bellevue. And so there's that one. And then I also agree that we need to be looking at the mandatory affordable housing in Bellevue. We had that many years ago and units were being built. If we are building to the scale that we need and to be bold, I think we really need to look at that. And then lastly, on the housing needs assessment, I think one of the pieces I worry about there is when we get that done in Q2 of 2022, that we will have already had people that have moved out of our community that wanted to live here. So when we look at the need, it may not actually identify the full need in our community because we may have already pushed out a lot of the folks that really would want to live here. And it is exacerbating our transportation challenges. So to the degree we can create the housing in Bellevue for people that work here is going to be so important. So anyway, really excited about the work we've got and look forward to understanding what proposals have come in from the 1590 RFP and what level of opportunities and partnership is available right now. Thank you.
Well, we've gone around. Did you get all the feedback you need?
We did, Mayor. I think this was a very good conversation, and we're really looking forward to coming back and talking to you about what can be next, you know, in advancing all this work.
Terrific. Thank you, and welcome aboard, Avery. Okay, it is almost 8 o'clock. We're going to take a 10-minute break, come back at 8:10 to do our last item. I'll see you then. Our last item is a land use item. Mr. Miyake, would you like to introduce?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members. As you mentioned, the next item is a land use item, and it is of a quasi-judicial nature. It's a quasi-judicial rezone. This matter has been in front of you before. It's with respect to the Northeast A Street Partners rezone application. Given the quasi-judicial nature of this, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Nicholas Melosinos, our Deputy City Attorney, to do further introduction of this particular topic. Nick?
Thank you, Mr. Miyake. Good evening, Mayor and council and council members. The next item for business is final action of the rezone application that was submitted by Collins Warman for a rezone of 2 parcels totaling approximately 0.93 acres located at 13 635 and 13655 Northeast A Street from office to residential high density. This is a process 3 quasi-judicial proceeding. The hearing examiner held a public hearing and then made a recommendation to the council for approval with a condition, and no appeal of that recommendation was filed. As council will recall, at the September 27th council meeting, Carol Orr, the associate land use planner, provided a brief staff report on the matter. And tonight, this matter is before you for deliberation and vote on the rezone application. For the convenience of the council, and in the event the council votes to approve the application as recommended by the hearing examiner, staff prepared ordinance 6608, which was included in your packets. If council chooses not to approve the rezone application and makes a different decision, then staff will prepare an ordinance following council direction and come back at another meeting. The other options besides approval as recommended by the hearing examiner are to approve with additional conditions, remand back to the hearing examiner for an additional hearing limited to specific issues identified by the council, or to deny the application. Since this is a quasi-judicial matter and therefore subject to the appearance of fairness doctrine, I would recommend, Mayor, that each council member be given an opportunity to disclose on the record any ex parte communications that they may have had with any person supporting or opposing the project prior to your deliberation and vote on the matter. To most efficiently enable council members' disclosures, staff have searched all emails received at council@bellevue.gov and individual council members' city email addresses. There were none found. Therefore, council members need to only disclose any contacts received from any other city accounts.
Has any council member had any ex parte conversations about this topic? If you have, would you please raise your hand? Not seeing any. I will say they have not, and I have not.
Okay. At this time, Mayor, I'll turn it over to Liz Stead, the land use director, who will put the map up that depicts the location of the proposed rezone. Liz?
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. Thank you for having us here this evening. As you recall, this project is located on Northeast 8th Street. There were 2 parcels associated with it, 13635 and 13655 Northeast 8th. I have put this up on the screen for your convenience. If you have any questions, we're available to answer today.
Okay. Is that it? Is that the presentation?
Well, yes.
That's
so
it.
we did
All right,
do
so
that report a couple of weeks ago. So this is just a quick one.
That's fine. So the question before us tonight is whether or not we are going to approve this application for the rezone. So let's go ahead and let me look at everybody. Does anybody have any comments or questions on this proposed ordinance? Not seeing any. Is there a motion to approve this application?
I move to adopt ordinance 6608, approving the rezone application permit file number 21-104902-LQ, a rezone of 2 parcels totaling 0.93 acres located at 13635 and 13655 Northeast 8th Street from office to residential high density.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great, that passes. Well, that is the last thing on our agenda. Thank you very much, everybody. Meeting is adjourned and we'll see you next week. Good night.
Good night.